Same thing goes for looking at your body as a car. You want to have a really, really strong chassis. You want to make things really, really durable. And then you want to have an engine that your body can withstand to put that speed. But most of the time, we neglect the amount of time that it takes to build that. So again, if you really want to, and this is why I don't want to say I'm anti-track work, even though I kind of am in a lot of ways. I want athletes to build an aerobic base to make your speed work matter.
There, buddy?
Hey, yes, I am here. Sorry, man. I popped in early on you when you called a minute ago. I was trying to close out a tab, and then there you go. I'm staring at my face with a live video stream, and nobody wants to see that.
Oh, I like to see in your C26 hoodie over there, man.
My favorite hoodie. Welcome. It's February 13th, 2020. Welcome aboard. Crushing Iron Podcast 347.
Yeah, man. Right? Happy Valentine's Day.
It's not Valentine's Day, dude.
All right, that's tomorrow. We can wait. I mean, I know I definitely don't want to push that one ahead.
Yeah, that's like the biggest. That's the hallmark of all hallmark holidays. But hey, you know what? Some people like to get out, do a little romanticizing, have a nice candlelit dinner with their significant other, and the rest of us, well, we'll stay at home and try to watch a movie on Netflix or a show after we put our toddlers to bed and remember and reminisce of days of old where we got to actually go out and do things that were fun and not have our kids rule our world.
Yeah, but that's how you like it. It's a good excuse.
It is, you know me, it is any kind of a good excuse to like lay low and like not do anything. I'm all for it. I'm like, yeah, because as a parent, you now have, although like your kids are obviously, they're wonderful and I love our son. He is a fantastic excuse. When needed, it is like, dude, I'm sorry. Like we can't come meet you guys. We can't do this. Hayden, we got to get him in bed. He's not feeling well. He's kind of grumpy. You can always throw the kid in the mix. And instead of being like the party pooper, you get like a special star sticker for being like parent of the year. They're like, oh, look at them. They're putting their kid first. They're letting they're taking care of their kid. They could come out tonight, but you know what? They're going to stay home with their kid. And meanwhile, I had no intentions of ever getting out of my sweatpants and going out and do anything. But yeah, here I am. It's like the best of both worlds, man.
I know. That's my biggest problem is I can't use that excuse.
Dude,
I got a dog, yeah, but I have to be like, sorry, I'm just depressed. That's my excuse. It's getting old, man. It's run its course.
You can't use that because then what's gonna happen is, and again, we'll get into our Crushing Iron podcast. That's with the triathlon in a second. But if you use that too often, then you're gonna get people coming to you, and that is also a significant problem. So you don't want that either, because if you say, I'm not coming out, man, I don't feel like I'm feeling kind of down in the dumps, I'm kind of depressed, then next thing you know, you're not going to get a text with like a ding ding, you're going to get a they're going to be like, oh my God, who is that? I know from Amazon. You're going to open your door and there's going to be like, Glenn Rolbecky and, a couple other guys. I'm like, dude, what's up? And then you're like, crap, now I've got to like actually talk to people and socialize. I'm screwed. But listen, dogs are also a great excuse. People love their dogs more than they love their kids sometimes. It's like, oh, my dog's sick. He's got the hiccups, and I'm just really worried he's going to have another episode. So I think I'm going to stay home with him today and just be with him. And you're like, dude, it's Tuesday. You've already called out of work the next like 4 days. But hey, if you got a dog, you understand this because, if you're a dog person, like you would do anything for your dog. I'm super cheap when it comes to a lot of things, or most things. And when it comes to like if my wife orders like a $3 thing from Amazon, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, we don't need that. And then if it has to do with like our dog, like Kona, if she gets sick, I'm like, what's that going to cost her? Like, I don't know, like $6,500, $7,000. I'm like, do it. Like, no questions asked. Do it. I know you're the same with Maddie. You're like, just whatever it takes, take care of the dog. I just think it's an interesting phenomenon there. But hey, we love what we love, and we can't complain about that.
All right. Yeah, welcome to the Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast.
where we cover it all. Obviously, if you haven't gotten that, we do. We cover it all. We cover triathlon. We cover life. We cover races, race recaps. We do interviews with select individuals. We talk mostly about Mike and I's personal experiences, both as coaches and athletes. We cover topics that include, obviously, swim, bike, run. We sometimes dive into nutrition, and we dive into how to approach your training, how to execute your training. But a lot of times we like to combine that with the real world approach or the real world effects that triathlon has. And then obviously the most important part and what we try to really emphasize is the fact that, we do this for fun. This is a hobby. We do this to hopefully enrich our lives, to make us happier, to make us healthier, to relieve stress, to not add stress, to help deal with anxiety, not add anxiety. And we oftentimes will just hopefully, go through what we're personally going through, or maybe even dive into a couple of topics that have been brought up in our closed Facebook group, which is on Facebook. Obviously, it's Crushing Iron Group if you want to search that. And that's it. If you can leave this podcast and you can take just one or two items from it that you can apply to your own life and apply to your own training, and that be positive and have a positive influence, and we will consider this podcast a success. And I actually was thinking about the wide range of topics that we cover, and I was kind of skimming through our podcast list just out of curiosity earlier this morning, and like, whoa, I can see why people would kind of be like, oh, Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast, scrolling through the titles, what in the hell is this thing even about? Because we cover it all, man. But I love that, and I think it would be an interesting poll. And I thought about doing this. Like, it'd be an interesting poll in our closed Facebook group to like, would you consider our podcast more of a triathlon podcast or more of a life podcast? Because for as many, neither one of us claim to be people with Dr. Phil, TV channels and stuff on. But we cover it all, and we talk about it, and we're open with it, and we're honest with it. And I do love the fact that people consider a lot of the information that we put in this episode. Like one of the feedbacks we got from the podcast that I thought you did just an amazing job on, which was last week, was that this specific athlete listened to our podcast and told his wife to listen to it, and she's not even involved with triathlon. And I do, like, I know I say we as in me, make a lot of analogies. Sometimes they're terrible, but hopefully times they're good, because there's so much to take and apply, both as we train for triathlons and we're competing in all these kind of endurance events, and then how it kind of mirrors life and the things that we're trying to overcome. And hopefully that triathlon, as we're training for it and we're approaching it in a positive way, can hopefully mirror and show us examples of ways that we can do better in life and or improve in life. And then that's what we do, or at least that's what we hope to do.
Yeah, you got.
I know you just can't. Dude, you can't change. You can't go back and not be the Mike Terrali that we knew 2 weeks ago before we started throwing in the yeah mans. I mean, that's like me not saying again anymore, or me saying Triathlon Tim or ABC and 1, 2, 3. Like I get crap for that all the time. Like, I can't change it. It's who I am. Don't change it, man.
I'm trying to change, man. No, I'm not trying to change, but it is on your mind, and we just go after different stuff. I mean, we're both very curious people, I think, and like the stuff that I get involved with and the stuff that you get involved, we just want to explore that, and I think that's just sort of what happens. And ultimately, as we always talk about, triathlon should be fun. I think the podcast should be fun for us, and that's why we kind of we'll uncover different things and start talking about them, and that's what it's all about. You mentioned that sometimes we go into diet, and I saw a post yesterday.
I knew this was coming, man. I knew this was coming. I saw you comments on it. I was like, yep, I'm going to go ahead and prepare myself for...
First it was hot tea, and now it's the big V.
No, dude, it's not. First off, let's be very specific here. No, I am definitely not going vegan or becoming a vegetarian. Nothing against it. It's just not for me. But no, the last 2 or 3 weeks, Allie and I have been trying to, and me specifically, because in the past, I have been absolutely horrid. When I say horrid, I mean basically non-existent in consuming the appropriate amount of fruits and vegetables, and I've always in the past, like going back to when I used to weigh like 225, 230, And right now I'm down to about 183, but like the last couple of years I've been down in the low 170. So I know what it's like to lose weight and go through that process, and how frustrating and taxing it can be, and overwhelming it might be, and how long it takes. But instead of like, you see all these different fads and things that are going out, like, oh, you need to do this and this and this and this. And what I've always found for me that has worked the best, it's the simplest, is to just eat lean meats, fruits and veggies. Like, it sounds that simple, and it is. And so the last couple of weeks we've gone back to that, and I have incorporated like vegetables and fruits in almost everything, almost every meal. And so, yeah, my wife like did this like misfit box, which is basically you get this gigantic box of vegetables and fruit delivered to your doorstep. They're all good fruit, but it's all, ugly fruit or vegetables. Like, it's got, stuff that they put in the supermarket and people wouldn't buy it. So it would just go to waste, because it doesn't look perfect or whatever. And it's just as good, and it's super cheap. It's like $30 for this giant box of vegetables. And if you shop at places like Kroger or Aldi, Publix, whatever, you can walk in. I mean, for Aldi especially, you can walk into Aldi, buy 5 avocados that look ripe, and by the time you get home, they're all brown. And so but yeah, I've honestly been trying to do it. I have been focusing on it, and I'll be honest, man, I feel better, and I'm happy that, or I'm happy with the way that I've felt since doing it. But no, I'm definitely not going vegan. I'm just trying to overall treat my body better and go into a little more detail with the foods that I'm eating, and make sure that I'm taking care of myself the way that I should be. I don't know, man. You wanted me to go with
the best advice I heard on diet ever was just eat as many leafy green, get as many vegetables as you can, and then the rest of it sort of takes care of itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I mean, I will say this, and this can easily sum up the way of how things have gone and how focused I've been. Is we bought a container of kale, and I threw none of it out.
Wow.
If that doesn't sum up the approach and how things have been going, then I don't know what does. But speaking of approaches, I have, for those of you that are still with us, and we appreciate that patience, I have a topic today. I have a couple topics today, but hey, I want to give you the floor, see if you have anything burning inside that you want to cover and dive into today, and I'll open the floor to you first.
Thank you for the open. I'm not, I have nothing. So, I mean, it's just enough to be able to hang out and talk.
I was thinking that this might be the day that I say, "Hey, man, what's on your mind today?" And you'd be like, "Oh, actually, I have this three ring binder of notes that I've been waiting to dive into today. So let me begin with phase 1." And then I was gonna relax and put myself on mute and have another cup of coffee or hot tea and get along with it. But no, today. Yeah, I was having this conversation yesterday. So today I want to talk about the importance and oftentimes the neglect of aerobic base. So like if you're either a new triathlete or you're an experienced triathlete, most of you have heard of these catchphrases like peak phase, build phase, base phase, and all the things that might go into those things. And a lot of people will harp on, base phase and what you need to be doing in there and about its aerobic development. And one of the things that I learned when I first started getting into coaching 10 plus years ago was you can never be in base phase too long. Like there is no such thing as being in it too long. Do you need to obviously go into specific phases and change adaptation so you can get the physiological response you want to? Yes. But if you're so here's the way a lot of athletes look at things. I'm going to go, prepare yourself because here I go. A lot of athletes will say, and I sometimes get this email or stuff when people are reaching out for coaching. Hey, when's it a good time for me to start getting coaching? I'm doing this Ironman in March. Like, what about 3 months out? I'm like, you could do that, but now we're basically going to have to deal with people like to put off the amount of work, and because for some people it's boring because people like to go fast, people like to go hard, that building an aerobic base does for you. And obviously base building, the way I see it and the way I've interpreted it and the way we apply it to our athletes is your base phase is, to me, is building endurance. You're building and focusing on the aerobic endurance and development. You're also working on what I would consider skill stuff like high RPM, low RPM stuff on the bike. You're working on, pickups and strides and running, maybe even some hill work later on in the development. And the swim, obviously, you're working on stroke refinement and shorter intervals to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. What so many athletes tend to forget or tend to just basically bypass, and again, I think there's a lot of ways you can go through periodization with these phases, and you have people who like to call themselves, I do reverse periodization, when I do hard stuff first and then long stuff later. And the fact is, there's no such thing as reverse periodization. You're just periodizing a different way. So you can either there's basically two different schools of thought if you're going to do periodized training, which is you do fast before far, and you try to get really, really fast, and you turn that fast into far. Or the traditional way people have always done it is you try to go really, really far, and then you basically scale back the distances and the amount of time you spend in your aerobic zones, and you scale it back to focus on more race pace intensity. That's more of the traditional approach. So people want to call it reverse periodization, but it's not. It's just you're periodizing a different way. But I was in a conversation. The reason I got to talk about this was I had an person yesterday I was talking to the phone who's getting into coaching, and we were talking about the benefits of base building, what you want to do, and what you want to do with. It's a great question. And oftentimes we 100% neglect this topic or we don't oftentimes voice it in terms of how we're, giving examples. But this person asked me, how do you train, or how would you approach a person who was looking to get into just, I don't want to say just, but they're looking to get in sprints and Olympics. How do you train them? What their long rides and long runs look like? How do you apply their training? What would you look to do to improve their abilities to do the swim, bike, run to their sprint distance and their Olympic distance? Well, in my experience, and this obviously isn't true with everyone, because a lot of triathletes come from previous backgrounds, whether they're a former swimmer, they're a competitive runner, they're now looking to do cross training. It's like, a lot of triathletes get into it, become triathletes because they used to run. They got injured. They're like, I want to cross train. I'm biking and I'm swimming. Okay, I'm a triathlete and I didn't know it, so I might as well just go ahead and do it. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, this is great. Or they come from a cycling background and they need more, they need to change things up a little bit. So sometimes there are athletes that come to triathlon with a very, very large aerobic base, so this would be different for them. But many of us that come to the sport in general, myself included, when I got into this sport, 15, 16, 17 years ago, I had no base. Like, I was baseless. I was the opposite of having base. I was really overweight for me at that point. I had done nothing. Like, I think I've told this story in the podcast before, but I woke up one day, I didn't wake up one day. My mom said to me, Robbie, you're fat. So that's a polar opposite of waking up one day. It's like, I did. I woke up that one day, and then my mom looked at me and she was like, Robbie, dude, you're fat. I was like, yeah, I know. And at that point I was drinking a lot. I was eating a lot. And I weighed about 50 pounds, 6 pounds more than I do now. And I remember, I was like, all right, well, I used to swim growing up year round. And it's like riding a bike, man. I can go swim. And so I drove up and I went to the Concord Road Y, and I was wearing these, like, I still remember it very vividly to this day. I was wearing these blue, and I know my athletes are going to laugh at this. I was wearing these blue cargo short swim trunks with a kind of like a white lining on the bottom. And I got in, I was like, all right, I used to swim, like sub-minute hundreds, like when I was 12, 13 years old. I got this. This is nothing. And I swam at 25, and I almost died. I thought the lifeguard was going to come get me. I was toast. I was absolutely toast. And I think I swam back to the other end because I had to, because my stuff was there. And I got out and left. I had absolutely nothing. My aerobic base that I had, I still had the stroke. I still had the form. I still know what to do. It's, people say it's like riding a bike. Well, yeah, it is. But like, how many pedals and how fast are you going? Like, and that's how it was for me with swimming. And so what I learned is I started to research and learn these things and buy training programs of my own. Back then was that I just need to get to a point to where going hard is actually worth it. And so what I mean by that is, like, when you're getting into the sport, and it's not just getting into the sport. If you're an athlete who has had a long layoff, like, I think sometimes we forget these things as we train, and we've been in the sport for a very long time, is you can go through kind of, I don't want to say symptoms, but you can have Yeah, kind of symptoms of being detraining that come in after like 2 weeks of basically just being sedentary. Like you're really, really sick, you have something happen in your life, you don't do any work, and you go out for a hard bike or a hard run, and you might be able to power through on the bike, like doing intervals, and put out the same power, but your heart rate is sky high. Same thing for running. You go out and you might run, 5 or 6 miles, and you might be able to keep the same pace, but your heart rate is significantly higher. Therefore, the stress you're putting on your body is greater. So going back to aerobic development, most athletes like to skip not just the importance of aerobic development, but the time it takes to make an aerobic base that is wide enough and expanded enough to where the hard stuff matters. We talk about a lot. We talk about increasing durability. We talk about building up your chassis. We talk about building up the frame and the chassis and then working on the engine. So your car, which is, your body is your car, can withstand and hold that engine without breaking. And when you're getting into the sport, training for sprints and Olympics, like you don't want to just focus on the distance specifically, because there is no such thing as too much aerobic work, especially when you're getting this in the beginning or when you're coming back from an injury or a setback or just taking time off. The point of hard work is to sharpen the sword or to put icing on the cake. You can't go in reverse. You can't have it 95% icing and 10% cake. You don't want to have a really short dagger that is basically the same, length of the pointy end that it is the blunt part. You want to have a really long sword with a really pointy edge that's strong and durable. It can do a lot of damage. Same thing goes for looking at your body as a car. You want to have a really, really strong chassis. You want to make things really, really durable. And then you want to have an engine that your body can withstand to put that speed. But most of the time we neglect the amount of time that it takes to build that. So again, if you really want to, and this is why I don't want to say I'm anti-track work, even though I kind of am in a lot of ways. I want athletes to build an aerobic base to make your speed work matter. And a lot of times when you get in the sport, you think, all right, I got to get faster first. Well, no, because if you're just getting into the sport, you're just getting back into training, you go out and do, repeats, you're going to be shredded for like 3 or 4 days. You're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to be able to, you're basically you're wearing your current fitness level out. You're not building fitness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense to me. I never understand how people think especially for me, there's this memory of being a child, I think, and of being a kid, and we get into our 30s, 40s, and 50s and still think we're that person that is flexible and in just generally probably active shape. And then all of a sudden we're, 45 years old thinking we can still run sprints. I got a buddy that just was, he goes, I've been getting back into running. I'm like, good. Yeah. He goes, yeah, I just went out tonight and did wind sprints. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, I felt great, man. And, wind sprints is such a, right there, that's the key, right? That's the old term,
right. Yep.
From
Get
back in the
shape,
day.
maybe doing wind sprints.
Wind sprints. And then I saw him like a week later and he was in a boot. He goes, I had a stress fracture in my foot. I was like, okay, that makes sense.
That is the hardest thing to get across to athletes and just people in general, is that, because I think, and I know I'm guilty of this too, is that like, I say go slow to get fast, and that's not really the case. I'm not telling you to go slow. I'm oftentimes telling you to go slower. But the go slow to get fast is nothing new. It's been around for, I don't know, forever, in terms of the approach of polarized training, and they do this a lot. And I've talked about this before with the research that Steven Seiler has done and other sports scientists that look at cross country skiers, elite cyclists, marathon runners. They look at, for them, because remember, we're all different. We all have different zones. We all have different efforts. We all have different paces.
It's all relative, man.
Exactly. It's 100% relative. So everything is specific to you, and they'll fluctuate, and the percentages will obviously change up and down. But for the most part, they prescribe to around 80% zone 1, zone 2, which is considered easy to moderate training, and then the 20% is zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, sort of something depending on how you do your zones. Maybe in zone 6 on the bike or on the run. and that's an average, because a lot of times it might undulate from night being like in a base phase, might be 90% zone 1, zone 2, and then that 10% might be like really, really high anaerobic VO2 work, and that might just be 10%. Because as we've talked about many times before, is stress is equaled out to the total volume and the total intensity and the duration of it. It's not equal on all parts when you do zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. It's based on the intensity, it's based on the minutes. So if I say do 10% at zone 5 and zone 6, and again, this is a rough calculation, just giving you for kind of perspective. If I say do, 90, if you're mapping out your own training, you're like, I'm doing 90% of my stuff zone 1, zone 2, but I'm going to do 10% of my stuff at, in zone 5, zone 6, which is basically VO2 max or lactate threshold area. You're also going to say that's probably that's fairly close to what, 10%, the stress that's going to create is probably going to be equivalent to or close to what it would be if you did 85% in zone 1, zone 2, and 15% of more zone 3, zone 4 work. Kind of like, I was going to this analogy yesterday to the same person on the phone was, if I went out and said, all right, I need you to run 2 hours and 15 minutes, like really, really, really easy. But then I also, and so you might give a training, a stress score, to give yourself a number of, 200. But I could also say the next week, now that I know you can do that distance, and I know you're going to create this amount of stress, even though I don't really obsess about or even really look at TSS, which is training stress score and training peaks. I just know about what it's going to equate with the specific athlete. The next week I might say, all right, I want you to run for an hour and 45, an hour and 15 minutes, but I want the last 45 minutes really, really hard. That is also likely going to equate to around 200 training stress. So it's all about, like, coaching is like 85%, 90% same for almost all athletes. It's the 10 or 50% of it that's nuance in terms of how do you want to manipulate things, how do you want to plan things, how do you want to organize things. But many athletes, especially, like, obsessed with like, oh, I just don't have a lot of time. I just don't have the minutes in the day. I just don't, I need to do the 10-hour a week athlete. That's me. That's what I need to do. So I need to go hard all the time. And like going back to your friend is like, it doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense to the average person who's getting into the sport that, if I want to go fast, or if I want to get faster, I gotta go faster. But again, what you're doing is all you're doing is priming and working the engine you already have. You might get incrementally faster, but you're going to basically negate that by taking away other opportunities via being too sore, being too hurt, and creating too much stress in one instance to map it out or extend it or displace it evenly over the course of a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, some more consistent work to get faster. Allie, my wife, has a friend of ours, Vernon. He lives in Florida. He's actually listened to like 2 or 3 of our podcasts, but he started running, and he was like, he was like, hey man, what's up, Vern? He was like, he's like, I just don't understand, man. How do I get faster? He's not a runner. He just kind of just started picking up. And I was like, listen, buddy, I know this is going to basically be the total opposite of what you think and what you believe, but you need to do it this way. And so I hopped on a call with him. I mapped out how things should look. He's like, man, he's like, that I don't know how that works, man. I'm not sure if I believe that, but I'll give it a try. And he was like, I hope this better work. And I was like, all right, well, thanks for the vote of confidence. And he texted me a couple weeks, or Sunday, he goes, bro, your voodoo body science stuff works. Well done. And I was like, but I looked up, and he's gotten up to going from like 1 mile, being able to run 1 mile in like the 12, so running like 8 or 9 miles like 3 months later. But what he was doing before is it was just like basically running himself into the ground. And so I think like when you're looking at your own training, or you're looking at getting into the sport, and you're so obsessed with how am I going to get faster and be so slow, is there is no such thing as bad aerobic work. Because again, when you focus on aerobic base, you're not neglecting, like, you still use the same muscles. I think that's one of like the biggest issues that we have as athletes, is that we look at, all right, well, I need to really work and maximize my fast twitch muscles. And the fact is all of your muscles obviously are connected. Ligaments, tendons are all connected. They all still get used when you run. Do you need to put the icing on the cake, or do you need to work on the engine in your car, or do you need to sharpen your sword as you get to that point later in your stage when it comes closer to race day? Absolutely. Think of it this way: if I'm giving you a sword that's barely been in the fire and I'm asking you to sharpen it, you're more likely to blunt off the blade, chip away, because you haven't done the work and you haven't created the base to be able to withstand sharpening it. Same thing goes with, not creating a durable chassis. You can put an engine in, the car breaks down after a mile. So like there is no such thing as an aerobic base phase or a base phase, however you want to look at it, as being too long and too much. Like when you look at Tour de France riders, like obviously they have an enormous amount of time to do these things, but most of their training is like just going out for like a crap ton of 4, 5, 6 hour rides. Like that is what they do. They put in a ton of aerobic work because you also still build the same mitochondria and have the adaptations that you do to get faster. Your body is a machine. It doesn't have specific, isolated compartments that don't complement each other. We confuse that all even more when we say, oh, well, bike and run fitness don't translate. Well, do they translate specifically 100%? No. But do they translate 100%? Because fitness is fitness. Like your lungs don't say, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. I know I've been riding 4 or 5 times a week and I've been really pushing it these last month or two, but today's a run. I haven't ran any. I got nothing. Lungs shut down. We're not sitting on a saddle. We're not going to work today. I can barely breathe. No, that's not how your body works. Same can be said for like swimming or just running. Like, will it be, 100% specific? No, it won't be. But are there adaptations and responses that intersect, that are overlapping? 100%. And so when you go back to like planning out your base phase, which is what a lot of athletes are in right now, you always want to have, or let me put it this way, you always want to be the most efficient athlete you can be. And efficiency starts at the bottom. It doesn't start at the top. It's about laying a foundation, laying an aerobic base that will allow you to go, because I think it was like a Joe Filio podcast I was listening to this time last year, and he said that running fast doesn't matter if you can't do it at mile 25 or 26 of the marathon. And so you have to have and so what I'm saying is you have to have the aerobic base to be efficient enough and durable enough to get you to that point to where it does matter, because speed means nothing if you don't have the durability, if you don't have the aerobic base to get you to a point to where it actually matters. Because you could be the fastest person in the world. That's where you say like a guy who runs the 800 meters might be significantly faster than a guy that runs the half marathon or marathon. But if you swap them, right, it's going to be different. The guy that's 800s, might be able to be in front of the guys for the first, mile or two, but then he's going to fade off and go back because the way they've worked their body is different. And so you have to be very aware, especially when you're going to longer course stuff, but especially when you're just getting into the sport, you're just getting back in the sport, sprints, Olympics, is like, don't just go for the distance ceiling. Go for overall development, because you hope, and at least I hope, as a person who loves the sport and hopes that it continues to grow, is that you're not going for your last one, your last race. So if you're training for a sprint and the bike is only 5 miles, or you're going for an Olympic and the bike's only 15 miles, don't make it 15 miles as your long. Keep going. Do an hour and a half, do 2 hours, because aerobic base and building that aerobic base is going to help you so much more down the line. I've had athletes ask me before, Coach, I'm only doing Olympic air. Why am I biking this long? Well, are you planning on retiring? No. Can you handle it? Yes. Does it feel good? Yes. Is it but good for you? Yes. Okay. That's what we're doing it. It's not, we never want to stop developing. So that's how you should always look at your training in terms of, obviously you have to work on timing and like when are my big races, when is my big A race of the year, because that might change on how you want to periodize things or put specific blocks where they are. You might want to bypass one and just kind of do a longer aerobic phase and just race the middle and just see what happens. And like that's, I think, one of the items that people maybe might understand is like when you look at all these ITU athletes that race almost like every other weekend, when they're not racing, they're rarely going fast. They're just putting in aerobic work, because the races that they are doing, like that's 2 hours of basically for them zone 4, zone 5 all out work. So they're sharpening the sword then. It's about keeping the sword durable, and they can actually soak more volume in by going easier, which is like one of the biggest things that people see in themselves when they start to work on, running in zone 1 or zone 2 or running slower, is they're able to do more. And more volume is better for running economy. It's better for aerobic efficiency. It's better for durability. And now they can do, okay, well, now I can run more and run often and feel better, and I'm getting faster, versus trying to do like the out of the box thing where like your friend did is like, I'm gonna head and do some wind sprints, man. And you're like, that's like the worst idea ever. You'd be better off going on like long brisk walks to build your aerobic base than by going out and running and doing it for a very short period of time, because all you're doing is showing yourself the fitness you have. You're not necessarily building the fitness that you want.
You know, the back to the food thing, it's like that wind sprint thing is like the microwave oven, and the other stuff you're talking about is like, what's that thing called? Oh, Crockpot. When you ever, I can remember when I was a kid, my mom's like, yeah, I'm going to start this stew. And she'd put it all together or whatever, and then be like, when's that going to be ready? And she's like, tomorrow. I said, I'm hungry
That's
now.
right.
I'm hungry
Yeah,
now,
right.
but man, by the time when you got to it, that is unbelievable. It's like it cooks it perfectly. It's sort of like I need to throw my ass in the crock pot more, because really the trouble I have always had, like I always played sprinty sports, either basketball or baseball and stuff like that. So I sort of already feel like I have that kind of innately in a way, and I need to spend that more time. When you're saying that about the Olympic, and yeah, you've only got 15 miles to ride, but you got to be, like 15 miles should feel like nothing at a, pretty solid pace. That's the goal, right? So how do you do that for longer distance stuff? And I've been the king of neglecting that, especially on the bike. It's like, yeah, I can, and I wrote about this yesterday, but I can joke about my long ride being 70 or 80 miles before an Ironman. But the reality is that I have not slow cooked myself good enough. I'm not aerobically prepared to handle that. I can get through it and I can ride it pretty good, but my goal should be to ride the same pace with that Cadillac engine or that chassis, that big car that doesn't even get phased. There's no chance of overheating if I'm going the speed limit, which should be my right pace. And so to me, it's like, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world, and it comes back to probably our number one mantra is patience, and really getting yourself in that good shape. I mean, we can all. It's such a quick fix world, It's like we don't want to study anything or really learn anything. We just want to go watch a YouTube video and figure it out and just go do it. But the reality is when you're actually trying to get better at something and in a long-standing fashion, you got to learn the basics, and you got to work the basics, and you got to build your body and your mind and your understanding of what's going on up over time. And so you have it. It's kind of innate then, And to me, that's like the key to everything. And it's just so hard because you got a race coming up and you want to get fast. But man, like you said, or Filio said, it's like if you can't go fast at the end of a marathon, shoot, if you can't go fast at the second loop of a marathon, I mean, that's what most athletes end up facing. And that's why it's like this whole speed argument kind of like makes me laugh, because if you've ever watched an Ironman and you see most people walking on that second loop, what's the difference how fast they are?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of track workouts translating on the back half of the 70.3 half marathon or the marathon. For most people, the ones that it does equate to are the ones that are putting in either an enormous amount of actual mileage and to complement their speed work. Again, it's about complementing things, or they already have, like, again, they might have a giant background in like collegiate running. They've been running their entire life, so they obviously have like the skill set. Like I could use that for swimming for me. Like I could probably go in and swim still pretty well, even though I haven't been swam a lot in the last like 6 months. You have that in you. Would it be the exact same? No, but yeah, we like to mirror the exact approach for what we all do. And so I think that, the other thing that you kind of touched on for a second there was, for me, it's also about like thinking about the margin of error think about what is like the safest route. Should I continue to be reserved and build up my mileage because I know it's still getting me faster and being more durable, and I know I'm going farther in the ad, or do I risk it with more speed work? It's almost like tempting fate, and that's again like every professional runner you've ever seen, for the most part, they've all gotten hurt. They all go through some kind of a niggle or a stress fracture, like a leg or a hip or a foot. So they all do, like they all have something, and that's not saying they're quote unquote overtraining, even though they might be. That's not saying their coaches know what they're doing, because their coaches obviously know what they're doing. They wouldn't be coaching professional runners. What that is simply showing you is once you get to a point, you're always going to be pressing for the next couple seconds or the next faster mile. And at some point, your body's going to say, I can't do it. I'm ready. I'm breaking. I'm done. I can't do this. We've done too much. It's that last like 5%. And again, like for professionals, they have to go for that. It's not because we all make mistakes and it's all about trial and error, but they all have these setbacks. And it's part of that kind of that professional running is like when you run this much and you try to run this hard to meet these goals and these paces that you have to meet to be competitive at their level, you're tempting fate. Your margin of error is so small that oftentimes you miss the margin and then you get the break. And so for like age group athletes to do this as a hobby, I'm not saying you shouldn't push the boundaries of increasing your performance. I'm simply saying to just be smart about it and understand that you can't push those boundaries year in and year out. Like we use the phrase, you only have a couple of matches to burn a year. Right? They only have one or two matches to burn. And for if you're like just now listening or you've forgotten that podcast, or that phrase because it was, tucked underneath, 45 minutes of other nonsense, that's fine. What we mean is that, burning a match is like, for me, you only have one or two matches to burn a year, which is you only have one or two times a year where you can just dig so deep that it's going to take a significant amount of time to recover from. And a lot of athletes like to see how many matches they have to burn. They're like cats, like, oh, I got 9 lives. I can just use them all this year. That's not how your body works. You're going to keep continuing to tempt fate till eventually you're going to have setback after setback after setback. And then you're going to ask yourself, oh, this is one of my favorites. Like, I can't get around. I always get injured. And then you say, okay, well, how was your running? Like, well, I would do, like a track workout on Wednesday and like a 3-hour run on Sunday. And then, that's kind of it. Okay, well, it's not that you can't run, that your body is injury prone. It's that your approach is injury prone. And we hate to look at it that way because it means we have to like think there might be a different way, or there might be a better way, there might be a more efficient way, there might be a safer way. But like this consistency is always the biggest kind of proven common denominator to success, is the ability to be the ability to be successful comes with consistency. And 80, I think there was a stat, I've said it before, it's like 86% or whatever of performance, of marking performance and success is training availability. Just being available to train. Day in, day out, day after day, week after week, month after month. So if you're doing things that are going to decrease the chance for you to be that athlete who trains day in and day out or week after week, you're now risking losing that time, losing weeks, losing months, losing a whole year to something that you could have. Because I think most athletes will say this when they go through any kind of an injury or any kind of a setback. They say, you know what, there was this one day where I knew that I probably shouldn't have ran, but I did it anyway. And now look, and that's how I got to here. I'll always applaud athletes. You know what? Way to be smart today. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Is that a conservative way to look at training? Maybe, if you want to put it that way, and I'm fine with that. Because a day off here is like, I don't know what the phrase, like an ounce of prevention is worth, a pound of cure. It's like that's how you need to look at your training. Is like scaling things back here, taking the day off here, being smart here. I was supposed to run, for me specifically, on my training this week, I was supposed to do 5 miles Monday, 6 miles Tuesday, and then and basically run every day this week. About 50 miles was my total outline for this week, and then a Sunday off. And Tuesday I went out, and I was scheduled to do yesterday. So this was Tuesday. Wednesday, I had an 8-mile run with some 3-minute pickups in it. And I went out Tuesday thinking, all right, it's not raining here in Chattanooga. It's going to rain tomorrow. I do not want to do 8 miles on a treadmill, so I'm going to do my 8-mile run today. And I went out and ran, and after about 4 or 5 miles, I was like, today is not your day to do 8, and it might not be your day to do 6. And so I scaled back things, and I just kind of took what my body was giving me. And then I also woke up the next day and said, I know that I'm just not recovered because I put in a lot of, because I traditionally just don't sleep very well at the camps we do. I put in a lot of energy. And then I think one day I did 18 miles on my feet in those trails. And the next day I did 12 or 13. So my body was recovering. So I overestimated what I could do following up that. And so what I do yesterday, I took the day off yesterday. I took the day off yesterday, and I'm going to hop back on the train today and do my 8 miles today and just kind of see how I feel. But I feel significantly better today. And I knew that if I had just gone out just to do it yesterday, it would have been a gigantic mistake. Not just a mistake for the day. And I've said this to a few athletes this week, like, don't think of today, think of the week. Don't sacrifice today for the integrity or the possibility of what the week can bring. Because you can bring either redemption towards the end of the week with allowing your body to heal and still getting quality work in and then being able to nail next week, or you can continue to take out a bigger shovel and dig yourself a bigger hole today and tomorrow, and then the next thing you know, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is gone. You're toast. And then early next week is also going to be suspect because now we're worried about getting you back to where your body can handle things. So, like, again, it's about margin of error. It's about tempting fate. And again, you might look at it as a conservative way to approach, but I've never had a person say, I don't know. I think I ran too much this week. It was all easy. I still feel good. I really wish, I could have done this. Like you build the chassis, you get the reap the benefits at the end. It's not sexy. It's not Instagram worthy, but being healthy is, because what's not also Instagram worthy? Posting a picture with yourself in a boot. That's also not fun. And so it's being smart is hard. Reining things back is even harder. And then even the most difficult thing at all is listening to your body and understanding that the bigger picture, or the big picture, is what matters most. If I really want to do this in a sustainable way, if I really want to do this for the long term, and I really do truly understand that it's the forest and not the tree, that's what happens in September and not what happens in February, that I got to be smart today, I got to do it the right way, and then I'll be fine as the year goes on, or hopefully as your triathlon journey goes on.
I like to think about it too, that I like what you said about don't sacrifice the day for the week. And I like to think about it in terms of like what you said about that run. It's don't sacrifice, the beginning of this run for the end of the run or whatever, or breaking it down. Do you have people like as they come up on races, for example, and feel like they're behind the 8 ball, a month or two, let's say a month and a half out or something like that. And it's the same kind of thing, right? Where you can't catch up. You just have to play. It's smart to play it safe, or do you know what I'm saying? There's sort of this tendency to be like, okay, what's the, I got to get faster here. I got this race coming up, so I'm going to hammer it home. But like, it's probably just better to like look at that in the same way, sort of.
Well, I say this, and it probably doesn't always get delivered the way that I want to deliver it, as my wife always reminds me. My intention and what I want to say might not come out in the same delivery mechanism. But, like you have athletes that always say, like, I feel like I'm behind. And you have athletes that generally, I don't like using that phrase because I just think it means that there is a predetermined destination and benchmark you have to be for each week, and that's just not the case, because that means we could predict life. And life is the greatest of all variables. As we all find out basically every day we live, that life is the greatest variable. And that's obviously, life is obviously the biggest, creates the biggest impact and stress on training. But we like to pretend like we can control it all. So saying that kind of things is like, we can control it all and we just can't. But So if you get sick or you have life's obstacles, you just kind of deal with it and roll with it. But for some athletes, and this is just the hard truth, is that they neglect and aren't focused enough and fail to be consistent and do the work at the right time of year, and then they all of a sudden feel behind. And they say, I feel like I'm too behind right now. I just want to do more. I feel like I have to do this. And then I sometimes will say, and this might sound, a little bit brutal, but well, then in order to not feel that way, you should have had the same mentality 3 or 4 months ago when the opportunities were there. And that we look at that. I know it might sound harsh, but that's just the truth. That's just the reality of it. Is you can't make up fitness. There's no magic pill. You can't go from a 2-hour ride one week into a 4-hour ride the next week because you neglected the 2.5, the 2:45, the 3, and the 3:30 you did 4 weeks ago because you just didn't want to get off the couch and do it. You can't skip it. Same thing goes for a run. Well, I ran 60 minutes one week. Well, the next week you were scheduled for an hour 15, an hour and 30, hour and 45, and then 2 hours. Well, the next one, I'm supposed to be on schedule. I got to get that 2:15 in. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's dangerous, and it's not something that I'm willing to do as a coach. I know that a lot of athletes don't like that, but that's just the truth. Like I'm not willing to risk your overall health because you made decisions to not train, and then now you want to change those decisions. You can't go back, and your body doesn't acknowledge the fact that, okay, well, I know I probably could have done it, but I'm gonna do it right now, and that's probably fine. No, you're putting yourself at risk, and it's not healthy, and it's not good, and you're gonna tear yourself apart. And so like that's why I'm such a fan of, and I think 80, 85, maybe 90% of the athletes that we work with on a year-round basis. And the reason for that is that A, they like the structure, but B is that like November, December, January, February, March, like to me, those are some of, if not the most important months. Because you're not just staying put. You're not just, treading water. You're getting faster and you're getting fitter and you're getting ahead of the game. And I understand people need to take a mental break and things need to change and volume needs to change. And I'm not, I'm far from a drill sergeant, even though it might sound like that based on my last quote, was that, I'm just not willing to sacrifice your long-term health for short-term bad decisions. Because my mom told me this a very long time ago. One bad decision doesn't, change another bad decision. And that's what we love to do as triathletes. So we skip these progressions, we skip these, weekends. And if we're following like the group run train plan, it's like, well, this week for the marathon, it's 2 hours, and the next week's 2.5, the next week's 2:45, and I just couldn't go to the previous one, so I'm going to jump from a 2-hour run to a 2:45 run, 2 hour 45 minute, because it's on the schedule. That sounds like the worst idea ever to do, because if you look at training, every training you do is supposed to elicit a response. And so if we're supposed to elicit a 2-hour response, it's going to take you're putting your body through trauma, you're banging it up so it rebuilds itself to be able to hopefully do it again. Like going up every week, again, is like one of those things that we have this common myth about, is you have to go up every week. Like there's a lot to be said of doing it well and doing it again, and then doing it again, and then doing it again. Because you execute things perfectly, you're getting fitter, you're getting faster, and I don't know, there's this thing called like being safe and being smart. But as athletes, we love to basically whitewash our poor decision making, our lack of commitment, our lack of motivation, and just choosing not to get things in, or just remembering the fact that we didn't do that work. So while we may, like, I've said this before, your body doesn't care that you signed up for a race. It literally doesn't care. It couldn't give any less of a shit that you signed up for a race. Your mind cares. Your pocketbook might care. Your ego might care. But your body and your stress level, they don't care. They all are about self-preservation, right? Taking care of themselves, being fit, doing the best they can. But if your mind wants to take it to a place to where you're going to beat it up and put it through the ringer, then go for it. That's your choice. But if you want to look at it in a sustainable way that's going to be healthy for yourself, think with your body, not your ego, or not with what you planned on when you registered. Think about what you're able to like literally do, and what you not just what you literally do, but what you have actually done, like your body of work. You want to look at the body of work. You don't want to look at a one-off or think that you're behind, because you just can't. You can't, like you were going back to the what you were saying about the Crockpot. It's like, oh, well, I'm running late. I'll just zap in the microwave, or I could have, I could slow cook it, and boy, is it going to get so much better. It's like, or I'm going to undercook it or overcook it in the microwave and taste like crap. That's what we like to do. Is like we like to use poor time management. We like to put things off. We like to procrastinate, and then we have to ask ourselves, why am I not where I thought I would be? It's like, well, the athletes who are consistent, who bang it out week after week after week after week, they don't ever ask that. It's the ones that find it hard to be consistent, that think, I think I'm just behind. Well, you're not behind. Are you where you could be if you had been consistent? No. But we can't worry about, like, that. We put so much worry and so much stress about where we thought we should be or where we're not, going back to Monday's podcast, instead of understanding and recognizing and ultimately respecting, where are you today? Because you know what? That's who we got. It's like being stuck with, a whole toolbox full of tools, and you decide not to build anything because you're missing one. It's like obsessing over what you don't have, so you just choose to do nothing. Be respectful of your body and where it is. And if you made bad decisions, or you weren't committed, or you just were in a funk, that's fine. We all do it. We all go through it. But don't take that out on your body. The same body that you're going to ask to carry you through these races, to carry you on through the rest of 2020, to carry you on through 21, 22, 23, through the rest of your triathlon journey, treat it with respect. All right? Don't take it for granted. Don't take advantage of it, because it's those times where you let your ego run the train, that you run off track. And that's a very dangerous game to play. I sound like a prick now, don't I?
No, man. Personally, I struggle with that kind of stuff, and I know that it has a lot to do with this idea that I've been addicted to excitement a lot of times. It's sort of this, how can I, make this more like dangerous or exciting, and it's the same exact analogy as not studying all semester and then cramming for a test, and then sometimes that goes well, and most times it doesn't. It's
but here's the thing: is even if it does go well, it's still not going to go as well as it would have if you had have done your work the whole semester.
Well, yeah, and it certainly doesn't increase your love for the game.
No.
You have a bad taste in your mouth because you've been sitting in the student union for the last 3 nights drinking coffee all night, and you never drink coffee when you're in college. And all of a sudden, you stay up all night, you take the test with no sleep, you get through it, and then you completely forget about everything you learned and move on to something new. And that, that's why I can't remember calculus.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like any of us need.
Nor do I have a love for it.
I mean, doctors don't need calculus either. But no, like I said this to an athlete earlier today in an email that's going through a different difficult time, and I said, listen, I said, if at any point you find yourself being more anxious about this race and being stressed about racing or getting the training in to meet the expectation that you had 6 months ago, even though life is drastically different, then it's time to stop. It's time to defer it. It's time to transfer it, because it's not worth it. We do this for fun. We do this to figure out things about ourselves that are good, not that are bad. We do this to work on ourselves, to make ourselves better, not to accentuate or focus on or bring out parts of ourselves that we don't like. We do this to get better at life. We do this to get better fitness-wise and health-wise. And I think a lot of medical professionals would say one of the worst things about health these days is the amount of stress that people are under. The amount of anxiety people are under with all the things that we have to focus on, with taking care of your kids, putting them in school, taking care of just normal financial responsibilities, and dealing with our life in general. All the things that come along with the trauma that we've had, or the life that we lived, or how we were brought up, or Life is already hard. Like, and I know triathletes love to be hard on themselves, but like at any point, you find yourself waking up and thinking, this is causing me anxiety. I'm not where I should be. Then it's time for a shift in perspective. And that's oftentimes really, really hard because you have that current perspective based on other things that have happened in your life. So it's not, and I'm not on any stretch saying it's easy to change. It took me years. What I'm saying is that at least allow yourself the opportunity to change course by removing the common, like life is all about removal. Like I know, like, and taking things out. Like I know life seems to be for most people about like how much you can gain, but it's not. It's how much you can remove. Getting rid of stress, getting rid of anxiety, getting rid of problems, getting rid of people, getting rid of things that cause you any of those things. You would say, all right, you know what? Maybe it's time to get rid of. And so I'm not saying get rid of triathlon. I'm not saying get rid of training. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that at any point, life's stress and how they're compacting and impacting each other go up so much that the only way for you to express that is through fitness and through obsessing and having anxiety about a race. Then it's time to reevaluate things. And the only way to oftentimes reevaluate those things is to limit the exposure and to that happening on a day-in-day-out basis. I've never had an athlete email me and say, Coach, I did it. I transferred to the next year. I feel worse. No. Every single time they say, oh my God, I feel so much better. Like I can actually look forward to training because there's no clock. There's no ticking clock on an expectation or a result you wanted. It's now going back to having fun and doing it because you love it, not because you have to or because you have to keep up with the Joneses or you have to meet this. Like love it. There's so many opportunities to love the sport and to love what it does for you as a person and as an athlete and as trying to get better health. There's so many awesome things a sport or any sport can do for you if you keep it in the right perspective and if you go about it the right way. But it's just as many ways there are to do that. There are equal amount of opportunities to absolutely destroy yourself, both physically, both mentally, and both emotionally. And you have to just be very, very careful of what street you're on and what path are you on, which direction are you going. And if you find yourself inching toward that one where it's becoming more of a negative than a positive, then do what you can, slam on the parking brake, turn around, do a U-turn, and retreat as fast as you can. And if you're on the other one where it's fun and everything is awesome and you're loving life and you just can't believe you are where you are, then just be grateful and then love it and do your best to help to drag people on the same street.
Flow with it. Yeah, we don't want you to destroy yourself. And that ends the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I didn't need to reiterate that, but yeah, but I do. It's like it's the opposite, Like that is the opposite of what I am as a coach. Is like destroy yourself, browbeat people. You got to do this. No, like if you don't want to, it's your choice. Like that's up to you. It's the coach's job to adapt and make things as good as possible. For the athlete and the environment they have and what they want to accomplish. You can't make athletes do things. That's like a huge misconception of what coaches do. Like coaches don't make athletes do things. They help athletes maximize the opportunities they give themselves. That's the biggest difference. But no, we want you to be happy. We want you to be healthy. We want you to do this for a long time because it has a lot of benefits and you can do a lot of things for your health. You can do a lot of things for yourself mentally and emotionally. You can meet a ton of awesome people and we want you to do that. And that's what we hope we get across in every podcast.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's keep it going. Bring us home.
All right, man. That's been great. If you want to get a hold of me, crushingiron@gmail.com. And if you want to get a hold of Coach Robbie, C26Coach@gmail.com. Please get a hold of us.
I mean, that's optional. You don't have to get a hold of us. Yeah, come on, dude. All right. You don't have to. You can if you want, but you don't have to.
Yeah. Anything else?
That's it, man. Check out our website, C26Triathlon.com. It is an awesome place that highlights our community and all the things we have to offer. Keep up the awesome work. Get out this weekend. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. Be thankful for where you are.
See you Monday.